Oh yeah, where are they? Oh. I think we should make it appointment at Great Clips for tomorrow evening or afternoon or whatever.
I want to go to bed.
I don't think they're available. No, they're not available.
So that was just a clip of it, and I encourage you. It's really a wonderful piece. It's hard to kind of get into if you're just going to hear a little bit of it, but it's about 16 or 17 minutes long, and if you want some music for relaxation or for meditation or anything like that, it's really a wonderful thing to listen to from beginning to end. And I'm not sure if you heard the theme of Tallis. It's in there. It's very clear. I heard the voice of Jesus say, and you can hear how Vaughan Williams really weaves that music throughout the whole piece. It's very pervasive. So do check that out. It's one of his most famous pieces, and it's very well beloved. It's just very beautiful. Okay, let's continue on. Between these two successes, the Fantasia on a theme of Thomas Tallis and the Sea Symphony, and the start of the war, the First World War, Vaughan Williams' largest scale work was the first version of a London symphony, and in the same year he wrote The Lark Ascending in its original form for violin and piano. That's probably maybe his second most famous piece. You hear a lot for orchestra and solo violin, The Lark Ascending. People like Joshua Bell and Midori and just famous violinists play that a lot with orchestras. So check that out as well. Despite his age, he was 42 in 1914. Vaughan Williams volunteered for military service on the outbreak of the First World War. He joined the Royal Army Medical Corps as a private. He drove ambulance wagons in France and later Greece. The continual noise of the guns damaged his hearing and led to deafness in his later years. During the war, Vaughan Williams stopped writing music, and after returning to civilian life, he took some time before feeling ready to compose new works. In 1919, he accepted an invitation to teach composition at the Royal College of Music, where he studied, and he remained on faculty for the next 20 years. In 1921, he succeeded Allen as the conductor of the Bach Choir in London, which is a very big choir, very famous choir, long-standing. And it was not until 1922 that he produced a new major composition, a pastoral symphony. During the decade, his wife Adeline became increasingly immobilized by arthritis, and the numerous stairs in their London house finally caused the Vaughan Williamses to move in 1929 to a more manageable home called the White Gates in Dorking, where they lived until her death in 1951. In 1932, Vaughan Williams was elected president of the English Folk Dance and Song Society. And in that year, later that year, he was in the US as a visiting lecturer at Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania. I'm just going to scroll down. During that year, He signed the guest book at Yale University. And that's normally how we see Vaughan Williams, this kind of old grumpy man, and not like the more kind of dashing man that we see in his younger years. Most of the time we see Vaughan Williams as this kind of hunched over man, like that. During the 1930s, Vaughan Williams came to be regarded as a leading figure in British music, particularly after the deaths of Elgar, Delius, and Holst. Holst's death was a severe personal and professional blow to him. The two had been very close friends and musical advisors since their college days. In 1938, Vaughan Williams met Ursula Wood, the wife of an army officer. She was a poet and had appreciated the composer with a proposed scenario. Had approached the composer with a proposed scenario for a ballet. Despite their both being married and a 4-decade age gap, they fell in love almost from their first meeting. They maintained a secret love affair for more than a decade. Ursula became the composer's muse, helper, and London companion, and later helped him care for his ailing wife. So Ursula, she just died in 2007. She was much younger than him. And we hear a lot about Ursula Vaughan Williams because she helped promote his music after he died. During the war years, he continued to write large-scale works like his 5th and 6th symphonies. In 1951, his first wife, Adeline, died at age 80. In the same year, Vaughan Williams' last opera, The Pilgrim's Progress, was staged at Covent Garden as part of the Festival of Britain. And if you know, The Pilgrim's Progress is a big allegory by John Bunyan. And Vaughan Williams apparently took 45 years to work on this piece. And there are a few choral pieces that choirs sing. One of them is called Valiant for Truth, that church choirs sing, and but that's pretty much the legacy of that big work. In 1953, Vaughan Williams and Ursula were married. It was the year of Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. Now, Vaughan Williams's contribution was an arrangement of the Old Hundredth Psalm tune and a new setting of O Taste and See, performed at the service in Westminster Abbey. So I'm going to play a video of the Old Hundredth that we all know. And this is a performance that was done in Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, why are we going there instead of Lincoln, England or London? It's because Sir David Wilcox was invited to conduct a concert there. And this was one of the pieces that he chose to do. And he has a little charming introduction to that piece. So I'll share that with you and see if you recognize this.
It's a strange thing that no congregation had been asked to take part audibly in a coronation service until the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. And then they were given a hymn to sing. And Vaughan Williams wrote a setting of the Old Hundredth Psalm tune. He liked it to be very, very slow and stately. So not unnaturally, some of the congregation ran out of breath at the end of each phrase. And it didn't go very well, because I think nobody told them also that there was a long introduction from the brass instruments, and they weren't quite sure, I think, which verses they had to sing. And there was an introduction to the last verse as well. I think one or two people thought that the introduction was when they should come in and sing. Of course, it's very difficult to rehearse a large congregation on these occasions. And the peers of the realm are not noted for their musical ability. So shall we see how you fare this time? There'll be an introduction from the brass, and then you join, as you see, in verse 1, and it goes on then into verse 2, and then the choir only will sing 3 and 4, and then there's this introduction to verse 5. Now try and indicate to you where you come in, And then there's another little interlude after the last line of the last verse before you sing your Amen. So the Amen is on one note, so it shouldn't give too much trouble.
How about some of those hairstyles? You like that? So I have a few things to say about that piece. First of all, David Wilcox was the conductor of the Bach choir in London. So he succeeded Vaughan Williams. I don't think he succeeded immediately, but he held the same post. Also, he was the conductor at King's College in Cambridge, very famous choir. So that's probably where you know his name. And we sing a lot of his Christmas arrangements, descants and things like that. So that was David Wilcox. Now about the piece itself, I bet you it was much slower at the coronation, but you can kind of tell, like with his introductory remarks, that it didn't go very well because, you know, it was so hard to coordinate. You didn't know when to come in, you didn't know when to sing, who was singing what, all of that. So nowadays we sing it very well because we know what's going on. But probably the first time that it was premiered at the coronation, it probably didn't go very well. Vaughan Williams was asked to contribute a hymn, and that was his setting. What a wonderful setting he made. Verse 4 of that setting was actually an old version of the hymn by the English composer John Dowland. So Vaughan Williams is taking music from the 16th century and adapting it to him too. So he didn't only adore people like Tallis, but Dowland, John Dowland, Purcell, and all of those. He always kind of looked back and found inspiration from that. Okay, just a little bit more and we'll be done. He and his second wife, Ursula, traveled extensively in Europe. And in 1954, he visited the US once again, having been invited to lecture at Cornell and other universities and to conduct. He received an enthusiastic welcome from large audiences and was overwhelmed at the warmth of his reception. Having been in excellent health, Vaughan Williams died suddenly in the early hours of August 26, age 85. And on September 19th, at a crowded memorial service, his ashes were interred near the burial plots of Purcell and Stanford in the North Choir aisle of Westminster Abbey. Now, Vaughan Williams was not without his critics. Aaron Copland, famous American composer, said, "Listening to the Fifth Symphony on Vaughan Williams is like staring at a cow for 45 minutes. So, you know, as I said, his music is pastoral. It's very English. It's not as kind of dramatic. Well, it is dramatic in some places, but you know, Copland was definitely critical of his music. We already talked a lot about his music, but there's a little, I want to do a little focus on the choral music, anthems and hymns in the last 5 minutes. He was never a professing Christian, but composed several anthems, canticles, and a mass setting. As I said earlier, he was the editor of the English hymnal with the Reverend Percy Dermer, who wrote the words to draw us in the Spirit's tether. He consolidated, in this new hymnal, he consolidated the best hymns of the English language and matched them with tunes that we know today. He introduced British and Irish folk tunes and carols, Welsh hymn tunes, the Welsh were famous for singing hymns, arrangements of German, French, and Swiss tunes, tunes by Gibbons and Tallis, and English and Scottish psalter tunes in their original form. So Vaughan Williams was really one of the first to consolidate all of these different styles. And that is true still today in our hymnal, 1982. We owe a lot of that to Vaughan Williams. Some of the hymns that he wrote, Down Amne, that we heard at the beginning, For All the Saints, the tune name is Sine Nomine. Hail Thee Festival Day, we sing that on Pentecost, Ascension, and Easter. The Call, which is from his 5 mystical songs. Kingsfold, I Heard the Voice of Jesus Say, which is an English folk song that he transcribed. And Forest Green, O Little Town of Bethlehem. Now, there are 2 versions of that. This is the one that goes, O Little Town of Bethlehem, not the other one. He also edited the Oxford Book of English Carols. And here is a picture of him and Howells, Herbert Howells, which I think we're going to talk about next week. And it says kindred spirits because they both loved Tudor music. Some of the large-scale choral works that he wrote, 5 mystical songs That's probably one of his most famous pieces for baritone and choir. Hodie, Sancta Civitas, 5 Tudor portraits, Dona Nobis Pacem. That was his response to the war. 3 Shakespeare songs, Serenade to Music, and some of the church anthems that we sing, Oh Clap Your Hands, a big anthem called Lord, Thou Hast Been Our Refuge, Oh How Amiable, which incorporates the hymn, Oh God, Our Help in Ages Past. In Advent, we sing This is the Truth Sent from Above. Valiant for Truth is what I mentioned earlier about the Pilgrim's Progress. He wrote a wonderful Mass in G minor for a cappella double choir, and also a big Te Deum. And then the music that he wrote for the coronation, O Taste and See, which we did a few weeks ago, and the Ode 100th, which we just listened to. So that is a very kind of brief introduction to Vaughan Williams. There's a lot more that can be said about him, but I really encourage you to listen to his music, explore. You know, there's plenty of stuff on YouTube that you can listen to for free. Find something that you like and, you know, kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit on YouTube, because there's a lot of great recordings out there and a lot of stuff that we don't know about just because his output was so large. You know, we can't talk about all his music. So does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you said that he did the notation for those modal
Folk songs?
folk songs,
Yes.
what kind of notation was that? I mean, what would it look like? Would it look like the music today with the?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would just look like regular music, you know, and he would hear someone sing it in the pub, and he would write it down on staff paper.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
and you know, so there will be sharps and flats just like there are today in major and minor scales, but it might not necessarily fit a certain scale because it was modal. So like the piece by Tallis, I heard the voice of Jesus say, is called the third tune because it's in the third tone or mode. So even though we have it in our hymnal as just regular, you know, treble clef, bass clef, it wasn't necessarily envisioned like that in the beginning, in its original form.
Okay, thank you.
Susan Leidy says that she prefers the O Little Town of Bethlehem that was written in Philadelphia by Reverend Stiers, I believe it is, the more cheesy one. Oh, little town of Bethlehem. That's the one that she likes, but that's not the one that Vaughan Williams wrote.